Hey everybody, good evening. It's late tonight. I'm sorry. I had a bunch of other things I was getting done tonight. I was a guest on another podcast. I'm working through all these other projects and things that we're doing. I'm keeping up with all your Facebook comments and emails. Man, I love you guys that you are so involved in reaching out and talking about these kind of topics, but it is kind of tough to keep up with. So I appreciate it. Hopefully as we go along, we're going to answer more and more of your questions. And you guys will have all those answers, so you won't have to keep wondering what's going on. But in the meantime, keep them coming. I really appreciate it. I'm just doing some house cleaning right now. I'm making sure the videos are started right, sharing the pages. I haven't started actually recording the proper podcast. So you're like in the premium pre-podcast zone by being able to watch this. So let me get this on the page here. Live now. That's what I'm typing, putting it on the Ryan Kleckner Facebook page. Check it out. I try and get as many things onto that page as a hub as possible because I have so many other projects going on, and I'm working with my marketing guy to get a better hub. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going into a brave new world. I'm having fun. It's keeping me busy. Can't believe it's working, being a media guy and an author and stuff like that. And honestly, it's because of you guys. So I do not forget that. I recognize that, and I really appreciate that. So thank you very much. I actually got to spend a better part of the day at the range yesterday, I think it was, playing with this bad boy. This is the upgraded SIG P320. And you guys got to go check out some of the videos or some of the pictures I have of what I put this thing through. Just because I wanted to see how well it worked. So go check out the Ryan Kleckner Facebook page, and you'll see what I mean. You just check out those videos and see those comments on there. It's been pretty fun. So all right, let's get the podcast going. You'll hear what we're going to talk about the same time everybody else learns. I'm going to let them know. I'm watching the comments on the Trigger Words podcast page. So if you're seeing this on another spot on Facebook, make sure you're commenting on the original post so I can see it there. Okay, so let's see, about 2 minutes and 30 seconds in. We'll get going here. Just a second. And welcome to Trigger Words. This show is brought to you by the Firearms Radio Network, and it's presented by Rocket FFL, your best source for getting your FFL and staying compliant with ATF rules and regulations. This podcast focuses on the legal side of gun ownership in the firearms industry. We talk about guns, law, and politics. I'm your host, Ryan Kleckner. I'm a firearms attorney, but I'm not your attorney. Therefore, everything we discuss in this podcast is for your information and entertainment only, not legal advice. The views and comments expressed in this podcast belong solely to the host and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official position or views of the Firearms Radio Network and or its employees. Listener discretion is advised, especially on the live shows. If you don't know about the live shows and you're listening to this podcast right now on iTunes or Google Play or your favorite podcast app, I broadcast these episodes live on Facebook on the Trigger Words podcast page. So you can see a little bit of free information before and after the show. I talk and interact with folks that you guys that are just listening to the podcast don't get to hear. You're not missing much, but I want to let you know what we're talking about. So last week, we applied the basic definitions of firearms laws to some real life examples and to see how those things might be able to matter. Well, I have a little bit of a follow-up based on some of the comments I got from some people about the products we discussed and also some more information I've learned. So first, that Maxim 50 muzzleloader. Guys, I still think it's a great product. I think it's ingenious. I think it's great that Silencer Co. was willing to use compliance as a competitive advantage. I applaud them. I think it was awesome. Now, as I said last time, and some of you guys misunderstood, I just think they should have maybe reached out first. I could have solved that for them in about 5 minutes, and so could some other people. So they're doing the right thing, but they just maybe, be some collaborative next time. We're here to help. So good motivation, maybe bad judgment on how it went out. Another problem they have with it is people are asking me, should they get it? Well, sure. I want to reward Silencer Co. I think it's cool they made such an amazing product, even though they had some hiccups on the distribution, and you can get it shipped straight to your door. That's awesome. However, do I want a silencer that's permanently attached to a muzzleloader? No, I don't think I do. If you know anything about black powder firearms, they are dirty. You have to clean them out with dish soap and water sometimes. And silencers kind of catch everything. That's what they do. They're great muzzle brakes because they catch all those gases. They also catch all that crud. And muzzle loaders have a lot of crud. So you're going to have a permanently attached device that is going to be a crap trap at the end of that muzzle loader. I would imagine if it were me, I would just get a bucket with some dunk solution or maybe some simple green and water, and just when I get home, that thing goes muzzle down and dunks in the bucket till next time I want to use it. That might be a great way to keep it clean. So that's a note for you guys out there. Now, regular silencer cleaning, don't really worry about it that much. I mean, if you got a rifle silencer, I say just shoot it and don't ever worry about it. Yeah, you're going to get buildup in there. It's nature of the beast, but you're never going to be able to get that stuff all cleaned out. And the supersonic concussion. If it's all subsonic, that's not true. But if you shoot some supersonic through every once in a while, that concussion does help break up those chunks that build up in that silencer. I heard John Hollister, a guy that knows more about silencers than I'll ever know, and a great, great guy. He said one time, you don't take the muffler off your truck and clean it out. Well, the silencer is just like the muffler. So I like to remember that one. So don't worry about the rifle silencers. Now, rimfire silencers, and this one on the Maxim 50, yeah, they need to be clean. I mean, a rimfire silencer will fill up with crud. It will feel solid if you don't clean it, which is why most of your rimfire silencers are made to be taken apart. They're either through modularity, through easy to work with, but also to get the pieces apart and clean out all that crud, because it will get dirty and you do need to clean them. And the same thing with pistol silencers. Now, pistol silencers are easy to take apart because they don't have much pressure. So most silencer manufacturers assemble these rimfire and pistol silencers like Legos. They literally have the pieces there. They just pop them together, assemble them, and screw it together so you can take it apart and clean it. Now, the rifle silencers can't really do that, or most of them can anyway, because of the pressures involved with shooting a rifle. The threads and the seams and all those things wouldn't hold together as well, so you're going to need welds and stronger construction that is not conducive to being taken apart easily and cleaned. So the next product that we talked about for last week, and we're going to talk about this week too, is a Springfield Armory Saint AR-15 pistol. And we talked about how they're literally advertising it as designed and intended for the manufacturer to be used with two hands, and therefore it cannot legally be a handgun. Well, I got an advertisement in the mail since that podcast came out, advertising that Springfield Armory AR-15 pistol. And through the little video, as they went through the features, they're naming them, I sat there and watched. I'm like, what feature are they going to list? Sure enough, they roll around to the front of it and they point out a forward hand stop. So right at the end of the handguard, they put a forward hand stop. What's that for? That's to keep your hand from slipping off. That's so your hand can index on something so it doesn't touch the barrel. Yes, they literally put a piece on this gun designed only for your support hand, and now they're advertising it as it's supposed to be used with a support hand. I'm not saying it's illegal, but I am saying it's not quite legal, and it's one of those things that no one's ever probably going to care about. But come on, guys. We can do better than this. Let's fix those things. And you guys now, already through all the emails and comments I'm getting, are getting educated enough to get yourselves in trouble, because you guys are keeping an eye out for what's going on, and you're bringing in all these great examples that you found in gun shops or other places. I mean it. This podcast eventually will put the legal side of my companies out of business, because you guys are going to know all the answers. So I'm kind of glad for that. That'd be a good problem to have, is not have to walk into a gun shop and hear whatever people are listing as supposed legal advice. So that's a good thing. Education cannot be bad. So I want to talk about tonight prohibited persons. That's not what I scheduled to talk about tonight, but some depraved, sick human being decided to go murder a bunch of people in Texas at a church, and that has changed what I want to talk about. One, as a meta view, like big picture, gun laws don't stop criminals. Any law doesn't stop a criminal. Matter of fact, by definition, once somebody's a criminal, clearly the law didn't stop them, or they wouldn't be the criminal. But there's also an issue that laws that are on the books that have a punishment are there to try and deter something, and the punishment is supposed to be severe enough as to somehow deter somebody. But the problem is, the most punished thing we have in our society is murder. That's what carries the most punishment. That is what we've agreed is the most heinous crime. And in each of these scenarios, the punishment for murder was not enough to persuade or dissuade, whichever the right word is, the person from doing what they did. So if you're going to tell me that you're going to have a law about guns that's going to help stop this, I just got to ask, what punishment or penalty are you willing to put on the possession of a firearm, of an inanimate object? In order to make it persuasive or dissuasive, man, I got to look that one up. In order to make it have an effect and stop the person from doing what they're doing, it must have a punishment or a penalty so severe as to convince them not to do it. Well, again, remember, the most severe penalty we have is for murder, and that did not, in fact, stop the person, so that wasn't enough, so we got to do more. Are we willing as a society to make a punishment for holding an inanimate object more severe than murder? Think about that for a second. You literally could just be holding something. Here's my new SIG P320 that's been upgraded that I've been playing with. Side note, I told the people before the show, but if you guys want to go check out some videos of a little over-the-top abusive testing I've done with this thing to see how well it performs, because I want to put it through its paces, you guys got to go check out my Facebook page. Look at some of the videos and the pictures and the posts I'm putting on there. I think it's pretty cool. I hope you will too. But anyway, my point is, here I am holding an inanimate object. Are you willing to say that this is worse than murder? Because you're going to have to if you're going to think that a penalty for a crime would ever stop somebody when a higher penalty didn't. Now, that's also not getting into the debates about what the Second Amendment is for and how your right is protected. It's not given. This is a future podcast, and maybe I'll schedule this for the next one, is we're going to talk some constitutional law. I get to put on my constitutional law professor hat and talk to you guys about what the Constitution really means for our civil liberties, for our rights. Does it give us rights? No, I'll give you a hint. It doesn't give any rights at all, and what they mean. We can talk about that later. But for now, I just want to say, at a simple level, a law only stops something with the penalty. And unless you're making the penalty worse than murder, I don't see how you can even start. And I think that's a good way, if you want to, try to debate with somebody, is because it doesn't get into the nuances of the firearm or not. It's just start right there. And if they're not willing to make it worse than murder, and if they are, that's a whole other conversation. If they're not willing to make it worse than murder, then you might as well say that no matter what you're going to do, it's clearly not going to work, because that wasn't enough to stop the murder in the first place. So anyway, I digress. Let's talk about prohibited persons. Let's talk about these, because the prohibited persons are something we've talked about already as people that cannot possess firearms. And I hinted at felons and some other people. Let's talk about what those other people are. The reason is, this is the law that was already broken multiple times by this murderer, and nothing happened. And part of it was due to the fact that he just lied. Heaven forbid a mass murdering criminal is going to lie. The other problem is the government is incompetent. And we want to trust the government to have our rights to give up our rights to trust the government how this is going to work. Let's break this down. So a prohibited person, as we've already introduced, is somebody who may not possess firearms nor ammunition. Now remember, a firearm from the second episode is anything that can expel a projectile by the action of an explosive. So remember, air guns, BB guns, are not firearms. A potato gun with compressed air, not a firearm. A potato gun that uses exploding hairspray, firearm. You also have the frame or receiver of any such firearm. So it's not just the entire firearm. It's the subcomponent itself by itself as a firearm. Then you have anything that can be readily converted into one of those. So not only those parts when they're finished, but somehow before they're finished, there's this magic line where they can be easily converted into a firearm. Then you have silencers and destructive devices. There's an exception to the definition of firearm, which is any antique firearm. And as we covered in episode 2, antique firearms are things like muzzle loaders, even if they're made this morning. And there's some nuances there. And without going into them, get back to episode 2 and listen to it if you haven't already. Well, we talked about how prohibited persons cannot possess firearms, but they can possess muzzle loaders, because those aren't firearms, or BB guns, because those aren't firearms. And remember, we're talking about state law only. In New Jersey, a BB gun is a firearm. Do not get this confused and get in trouble in your state. So I mentioned that prohibited persons can't possess the firearms, but they also can't possess ammo. And ammunition is very unique, like a silencer. Is it unique if it's like something else? I don't know. But it's unique like a silencer, in that every component of the ammunition is also ammunition. Same thing with a silencer. Every component of a silencer is a silencer by itself. So a cartridge case, gunpowder, a primer, and a bullet, the projectile, all four of those things by themselves are considered ammunition. they cannot be possessed by prohibited persons. That's right. A prohibited person has a piece of brass in their pocket. They are breaking the law. Now, there's two sides to this law. There's the first side, which says and applies to prohibited persons. It says they can't possess the following things, and this is who they are. That's the easy part of the law to understand. Hey, you're a prohibited person. You can't possess a firearm. But there's another part of the law that we're going to read next, and it may not seem like much of a difference to you, but it really is. The other side of the law says, even if you're not a prohibited person, you can't knowingly allow a prohibited person to have access to or have these firearms or ammunition. So it's kind of two ways. One is, hey, if you're one of these people, you're a prohibited person and you can't have brass or a firearm or ammunition, complete cartridges. But then the other part of the law says, hey, you normal citizen, law-abiding, you're going to be in trouble if you somehow knowingly give or allow that prohibited person to have the ammo or firearms or things like that too. And that comes into things like with my Rocket FFL courses when you're trying to get your FFL and you want to hire employees. Well, you need to go out of your way to make sure that your employees are not prohibited persons, because if you don't, and especially if you have reason to believe they are a prohibited person and you allow them to work in a gun store, you just gave them access to firearms. So not only you can't look at it and go, well, that's their problem. They're the one breaking the law, going to get in trouble. No, they're breaking the law and are going to get in trouble. And you're breaking a different law and are also going to get in trouble. So let's talk about what a prohibited person is. Under 18 U.S.C., remember that's United States Code, that means that's a law. Section 922G, remember we're in the definitions area, makes it unlawful for certain categories of persons to ship, transport, receive, or possess firearms or ammunition. Now, I don't know why they put all those in there. It's kind of like Adam Carolla likes to say he doesn't get with the smoke detectors on airplanes. They say tamper with, disable, or destroy. Why don't you just say tamper with or mess with? You don't have to put them all. So they put ship, transport, receive, or possess. I think you could just put possess because you have to possess it to do all the rest of those things. Firearms or ammunition. And this includes any person who, first definition, convicted in any court of a crime, punishable by imprisonment for a term exceeding 1 year. Now, let's break that one down. It doesn't say that they served prison time. It doesn't say that they were convicted for more than 1 year. It says convicted in any court of a crime that's punishable by a term exceeding a year. That's a huge distinction. So if you get convicted for a crime and the judge says, all right, you're guilty, but it wasn't that big of a deal, so we're going to let you go, take care. But if you go actually look on the books and the crime you got convicted of, I don't know, being a barber without a license, in your state, even any court, if your state says you're trying to be a barber without a license, that's punishable by up to 18 months in prison. That right there then means you cannot possess firearms or ammunition because you were convicted of the crime and the crime was punishable by time more than 1 year, whether or not you were actually sentenced to that or not. That can be pretty hard to track. Now, the good news is most crimes over a year are felonies. That's actually how they just make the distinction between a felony and a misdemeanor. Misdemeanors are under a year in jail. Felonies are over a year in jail. But some states have a difference there. So like New York, for example, on your third DUI, you can get punished for over a year in jail, but it's not a felony. Well, you have an employee or you have a friend or a family member or you got your third DUI in New York. You now are going to be in serious trouble by allowing them to possess a piece of ammunition or a firearm. Or if it's you, you're going to be in trouble possessing it. Even if someone else had it in the house and you have access to it, the ATF likes to have this constructive possession thing. So be careful. That's one of the few nuanced ones here. The next category of a prohibited person is a fugitive from justice. That makes sense. The third one is anyone who is an unlawful user of or addicted to, I don't know why they put addicted to, you're using it, you're using it, any controlled substance as defined in the Controlled Substances Act. Now, this is a problem because we have states that are coming out and saying marijuana's fine. Have fun. The federal government doesn't say marijuana's fine. If you are a user of marijuana, you are an unlawful user under federal law. Regardless of what your state says, you may not possess firearms or ammunition, or you're breaking a serious federal law. That's right. As you use marijuana, the second you use marijuana, you are not allowed to have firearms or ammunition. That's according to the law. I'm not saying that's right. I think marijuana should not be illegal at all. But that's what the law says. Now, it's hard to define who's a user. If you tried it yesterday and you're not going to do it anymore, are you still a user? If you used to do it all the time but you don't anymore, are you still a user? So that could be a nuanced toughness there, but be careful, because I have clients that'll actually ask me questions as their attorney saying, hey, I need to use alternate identification because they know from learning from me that they can't use a driver's license with an old address, and the alternate ID needs to be government issued, and they'll say, can they use their marijuana ID card? No. Now, mere possession of a marijuana ID card doesn't mean that they're a user, but come on. You have reason to believe that they are. Why is it worth risking your license or getting in trouble? All right, the next category is who has been adjudicated as a mental defective or has been committed to any mental institution. That doesn't mean going to a psychiatrist for help or a psychologist for help. That means you actually been committed to a mental institution or a court has said you're mentally defective. The next category is who is an illegal alien. So foreigners can get firearms under certain circumstances. They can possess them under certain circumstances as long as they're not a legal alien. So someone that is not a resident of our country, who has a hunting license, for example, can possess firearms and ammunition while they're here. Not even for the hunting purpose, just they can possess it generally. Unless that foreign person is also an illegal alien, then they're a prohibited person. The next category is who has been discharged from the armed forces under dishonorable conditions. Ding, ding, ding. The murderer in Texas had a dishonorable discharge. He was a prohibited person. He was not allowed to even possess any firearms or ammunition. So when the left wants to go out and ban AR-15s because they're scary and say nobody is allowed to possess AR-15s, let me tell you how well that's going to work. He wasn't allowed to possess any firearm. Whatever gun that the left thinks is okay, and maybe they think no gun is okay, but if they think a single-shot .22 squirrel rifle that only has iron sights is an okay firearm to have, the law prevented him from even having that, and that did not stop this shooting. So I don't understand how you think a law is going to stop anything. And the government incompetency is the Air Force never communicated with the Department of Justice to say, hey, by the way, we have a dishonorable discharge here. So when he filled out his paperwork, he just lied, and they did the background check. It was never caught because Nix, through the DOJ, never knew that dishonorable discharge happened. And you guys want the government to run your health care and be in charge of all these things? They can't get this right. Matter of fact, this right here was a failure, a 100% failure of the government to use the laws they already have and the information they already have to stop this from happening. Think about that. They had the information, they had the laws, they had the means, they had the responsibility, and they still let it slip through. It wasn't the gun shop's fault. Now, it's not the government's fault that he murdered a bunch of people, but you want to talk about gun laws, the government failed on the gun laws here. It could have been stopped. So the next category is who has renounced his or her United States citizenship. I have no idea how you're going to know if someone renounced their citizenship unless you've seen them do it or you see them on Facebook. The next one is who is the subject of a court order restraining the person from harassing, stalking, or threatening an intimate partner or the child of an intimate partner. Now, here's the next, sticky one. It doesn't happen every time. Maybe it's only the small minority of the time, but sometimes this happens. Sometimes a significant other, a lover, it doesn't need to be a wife, it says intimate partner. Matter of fact, a one-night stand is an intimate partner. Wants to get even. I mean, heaven forbid someone from the opposite, well, I shouldn't even say opposite sex nowadays. So your intimate partner, heaven forbid somebody with emotionally charged might do something crazy, but it's been heard of before that somebody might go and make a fake claim against you because they're upset at you. Well, if they make a fake claim, if they go to a court and say, this person is harassing me, I want a court order, the court's going to give them the court order. It's just too easy to give it to them, and then later you're going to prove your innocence. But when that happens, you can't possess guns or ammo. In many places, the cops will just come to your house and confiscate all your guns and ammo, regardless of whether the thing is true or not. Now, I think that's ridiculous. That's kind of against due process. You are due the fair process before the government takes your rights away. But they're going to say that they have a concern of safety and they want to get it out of the way. Well, the next category is who has been convicted of a misdemeanor crime of domestic violence. Another ding, ding, ding. This murderer from Texas was convicted of a crime of domestic violence by cracking his infant's skull and beating up his wife, which is why he got the dishonorable discharge. So that's at least two. And I've heard reports that he literally escaped from a mental institution. So that's 3. So out of the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 categories I read you, 3 of them, an entire third of the categories, he violated. So the gun laws on the books already made what he did illegal, besides murder. They made the possession of a gun illegal. Already illegal. Didn't stop anything, so I don't know how making it more illegal is going to fix it. And the government, who has the ability to communicate, to do these background checks, to prevent certain people from having guns, completely failed. And some people want the government to have more control. It blows my mind. So the other law I mentioned that actually restricts you from giving a prohibited person access to firearm is in 922 Section D. It says, further, the Gun Control Act at 18 U.S.C. 922D makes it unlawful to sell or otherwise dispose of firearms or ammunition to anyone who is prohibited from blah, 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 possessing firearms or ammunition. So essentially, it's unlawful for you to sell or otherwise dispose of firearms to any person who is a prohibited person. Notice that doesn't say who you know is a prohibited person, or you should know. It says if they are a prohibited person, it's illegal to sell or otherwise dispose, give, put in possession of. Now, if you didn't know and you did your due diligence and you had good reason to believe they weren't, yes, you violated the law, but I doubt you'd ever get convicted of it because you're going to say, how in the world are you supposed to know? But the problem is, if you had any reason to believe, and by the way, you're a gun shop owner, you hire an employee, and you don't do a background check, you don't get to say, well, I didn't know, because you would have had reason to believe you did the background check. So you got to be careful here. You sell a gun to somebody online in your own state, you don't have to use an FFL. You can just go meet them somewhere and sell it to them. But be careful. If they say anything that gives you a hint that they might not be allowed to buy a gun from a gun store, because, by the way, every question on the 4473 is these exact questions for a reason. They say, well, good, I couldn't pass a background check, or I can't get it from a gun store. First off, that could be undercover ATF. But second off, that could be the next mass murder that you don't want to be responsible for. That right there is your reason to believe they can't have a firearm. And the second you hand them a firearm, you've now violated your own law. So I've had some people say they want the podcast to be longer. I'm sorry. I'm going to try a short podcast for a while. I take that as a compliment that you want more, but I think in my use of podcasts, I listen to them all day, every day. It's nice to have a half-hour one just when you have a commute to work or something. You can look forward to it on one day just to pop it in and do it. And I really appreciate you guys' support on Rocket FFL, on Rocket CCW. I actually started a new business on Monday. I'm not telling you what it is yet because I'm really excited about it, and I think it's going to be huge. I don't want to give it away, but I can't wait. So I'm even teasing something I can't even tell you about. That's how excited I am about it. So go check out the Rocket FFL to get your FFL. You're learning stuff already along the way. You got me teaching you the courses as you get in there. I mean, there are other guides out there. Check them out. But you're not going to find a guide written by a firearms attorney and written by an actual gun guy. Go swing by my Facebook page and check out, or my Instagram page, and check out some of the videos and the stuff I've talked about with this new P320. I tell you what, guys, I never thought I was going to like it as much as I do. It's starting to grow on me, and I'm actually going to go out to the range and shoot a bunch more rounds. And I'm being fair. I'm uncovering warts and all, or just personal preferences that I may like or not like about it as it's slowly coming out. So you're going to see it. So it's about the best take I think you're going to get on the thing. So go check it out. And as always, I appreciate your support of the Long Range Shooting Handbook. Christmas is coming up. If you liked it, snag a copy. That's a perfect price range. It's about $20 on Amazon. 25% is going to military charity. Tell friends about it. Pick up copies. Guys, you're awesome. I really, really appreciate the support. I will see you. You will hear me. We will talk next week. Take care. Spread the word and tell people about the podcast so that I can beat my bet with Sean Heron. Thanks, everybody. All right, Facebook people, you're still on. Here's your ultra VIP after the show access. Holy smokes, you guys have comments going on here. I didn't even see them. Look how lax the system has even become on murder. Yeah, you're right. Live in California, they hate gun owners. That's true. Chris, who dropped the ball on that one? The Air Force dropped the ball on that one. Who gets held accountable? Nobody. It's the government, Chris. And Drew says government accountability. Exactly. That was my comment to Chris. So I appreciate you guys all being on here. Ooh, we got Zarnecki on here. You guys may not know who that is, but he's kind of a big deal from the military. He's a big SF guy. Friend of mine, Sean Heron's on here. Sean, you're going down, dude. I'm going to get more downloads than I even promised you by the end of the year. You're going down. And Abraham Wells, thanks for being on, buddy. Abe's my brother-in-law up in Alaska, and we like to talk guns and keep stuff together, and he's just a great husband to my sister-in-law and father to his kids, so thanks for being on, Abe. Everybody, you're awesome. Sorry for being late. I'm tired. I'm going to go to bed. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.